Welcome to the deep dive. You know that universal feeling of dread when your phone battery hits 10%?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Or maybe your car's fuel light flashes on right before a long trip? That need for energy, for fuel, for a charge. It's just, well, it's fundamental to everything we do.
It really is.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how that exact analogy, cars needing petrol, EVs needing a charge, that's actually the launch pad for today's deep dive. We're going to explore how our spiritual lives, our faith, actually demand that same kind of continuous refueling or recharging, if you prefer.
Constant topping up.
Exactly. We'll be drawing from the sources you shared with us, particularly a really compelling sermon that unpacks this whole idea and traces it back to some pretty ancient roots.
And it's such a common experience, isn't it? That feeling of being spiritually on fumes, or just having your internal battery blinking red.
Yeah.
So what we're doing today is taking a look at these texts, not just to understand why that happens, but hopefully to uncover some practical insights. How can we proactively keep our faith charged? The big question we're exploring is really, how do we live with a faith that's consistently fueled and, well, ready for the journey ahead?
Okay, so let's really lean into that car analogy for just a second more. The sermon makes such a powerful point, I thought. When you're planning a road trip, you don't usually wait for the fuel tank to be completely empty before you stop.
Right. No, of course not. You'd be stranded.
You top it up before you leave. You prepare for the journey. But for our spiritualists, how often do we find ourselves just limping along,
Toasting.
waiting for the faith tank to hit rock bottom before we even think about a recharge? It feels a lot like leaving the house with your phone at 10% battery.
Right. And then spending the whole day stressed about it.
Then fighting that losing battle all day just to keep it from dying entirely. It's exhausting.
That sense of depletion, of constantly trying to conserve spiritual energy, it's incredibly relatable. And as the sources reveal, this isn't some new struggle we invented.
Okay.
This human tendency to maybe neglect consistent replenishment and then maybe forget the source of it, well, it has really deep historical roots. The texts actually take us all the way back to the Israelites and their journey. It shows us this challenge is, well, it's practically as old as time.
Okay, that's a perfect setup then for our primary historical source today, from the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 1 through 11.
Right, Deuteronomy 8.
So try to picture the scene. Moses is standing there, right on the edge of the promised land, Canaan.
After 40 years.
Exactly. The Israelites have just spent 40 grueling years wandering in the Sinai desert. So it's this moment just charged with anticipation, and Moses is reminding them of something absolutely crucial before they step into that future.
In the passage itself, as the sermon points out, it's fascinating how it looks both backward and forward, almost simultaneously. Well, in verses 1 to 5, Moses is recounting their past, their time in the wilderness. He emphasizes how God humbled them, let them hunger, and then provided manna.
That miracle food.
Yeah, food they'd never known. And the purpose, the text explicitly says, was to teach them that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
Wow. Okay.
And it wasn't just food. Their clothes didn't wear out, their feet didn't swell for 40 years. It's all presented as God's unique provision and also his discipline, kind of like a father guiding his child.
40 years is a long time for clothes not to wear out.
It really is.
Yeah.
Then in verses 7 to 11, Moses shifts focus. He looks to the future. He paints this incredibly vivid picture of the promised land, calls it a good land.
What does that look like?
Oh, it's overflowing with natural abundance. Brooks, streams, deep springs, wheat, barley, vines, fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, honey, just bounty everywhere.
Sounds pretty good after the desert.
Absolutely. A place, the text says, where bread will not be scarce, and they will lack nothing. They'll even have iron and copper. So the instruction for them then is clear when they've eaten and are satisfied.
Yeah.
They are to praise the Lord your God. And, crucially, be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God. That forgetting part seems key.
Okay, be careful. That phrase jumps out. And this is where we get to that really powerful concept you mentioned, the one that ties it all together.
Exactly. The sermon highlights this key Hebrew word that repeats. It shows up strategically in Deuteronomy 8. The word is shamar.
Shamar, okay.
You'll find it in verses 1, 6, and 11. And it carries this really rich meaning. It's often translated observe or be careful, but it's deeper. It means something like to pay attention, to keep in mind, to keep in front of you, even to guard or to preserve.
Huh. So it's not just passive observing, it's active, like guarding something valuable.
Precisely. Actively remembering, actively protecting. And what's quite brilliant about shamar here, structurally speaking,
Uh-huh.
well, as the sermon explains, ancient texts often use these literary devices to really hammer home a central message.
Okay, like patterns or repetition.
Exactly. Yeah. In this passage, shamar acts almost like linguistic bookends.
Yeah.
It creates what the sermon calls a 5-1-5 movement.
A 5-1-5. What does that mean?
Okay, so the first 5 verses, 1 through 5, they focus on Israel's past, God's provision in the desert, what we just talked about.
Right, the manna, the clothes.
Then, verse 6 acts as a pivot. It emphasizes the command to observe shamar, the commands of the Lord. That's the one.
The central point.
Kind of, yeah.
Hmm.
And then the final 5 verses, 7 through 11, they look forward to the promised land, the abundance. That's the other 5.
Ah, I see. Past, pivot, future.
Yeah.
5-1-5.
You got it. So shamar really unifies their past experience, this pivotal instruction, and the future promise. It's like this carefully structured argument building up to that central point and then showing the result, the payoff.
Okay, that structure makes sense. But it brings us to a really crucial question the sermon asks. Pay attention to what exactly? Because when you read verse 1, be careful to follow every command I am giving you today. I mean, that can feel incredibly overwhelming, can't it? Totally. Like, which command? There are hundreds.
Right. There are so many individual instructions. But the sermon suggests maybe a more nuanced way to understand Deuteronomy 8.1. It proposes it might mean pay attention to the whole command.
The whole command.
Yeah.
Applying like a summary or an essence.
Exactly, like a singular overarching principle, not just getting bogged down in a checklist of individual rules.
Okay, so if it's the whole command, what does the sermon suggest that is?
Well, when we connect that idea of the whole command to the wider scriptural story, the sermon explains it points directly to what's often understood as the very heart of God's law.
Which is?
Love.
Ah, okay.
It echoes back to Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 and 5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength.
The Shema. Right.
And, the Apostle Paul picks this up later in Romans 13.9, where he says, basically all the commandments can be summed up in love your neighbor as yourself.
So the core idea here, according to the sermon, isn't just about like ticking off boxes of good behavior, right? Not just modifying moralistic behavior, as the source puts it.
It's intended to be fuel for faith formation.
Yep.
It's about the heart condition, the relationship.
Exactly. And here's another layer to shamar that the sermon brings out. It's not just about paying attention to the commands, the rules side of things.
Okay.
It's also about actively, constantly remembering God's provisions, both the miraculous stuff in the desert and the overflowing abundance promised in Canaan. Remember the good things.
Got it. So shamar is about keeping both God's heart, expressed in commands of love, and God's hand, expressed in provision, right in front of you.
That's a great way to put it. Keep both in mind. So if shamar is the key, this active remembering and guarding, what does the sermon suggest happens when that practice, when it falls by the wayside?
Yeah, what's the consequence of not doing shamar? Well, the source highlights this pretty stark repeated pattern throughout Old Testament Israel's history.
Okay, what kind of pattern?
They would, according to the text, forget God as their provider. They'd get comfortable with the good times, perhaps, and just forget.
Complacency sets in.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And then hardship would follow. They'd face attacks or invasions. Things would go wrong. They'd hit what the source describes as rock bottom.
And only then.
And only then would they cry out to God for help. It's depicted as this cycle where they consistently let the spiritual tank run completely dry, just bone dry.
Before they even looked for the gas station.
Exactly, before seeking that recharge.
Wow. Okay, that historical pattern, it definitely raises an important question for us today, doesn't it?
It really does.
How often does our own approach to spiritual nourishment, mirror that?
Yeah. The sermon draws this really vivid parallel. How we might approach spiritual practices, maybe like going to church on Sunday or prayer or reading scripture, often coasting in on fumes. We're not proactively topping up the tank for the week ahead, for the journey.
We're showing up because the tank's already empty.
Or the spiritual battery has died, right? It's like we only reach out for that quick charge when we're desperate, when things are falling apart.
Instead of building faith to its full capacity, ready for the long haul, keeping it topped up.
Exactly. Instead of making it a regular habit of shamar.
Okay. So bringing this all together then, what does this boil down to for us? For living with a faith that's, continually fueled and recharged, not running on empty all the time.
Well, the sermon points right back to shamar as the core answer. It really is about keeping what the source calls the heart of God, which is represented in his commands and his provision.
Both things.
Both things, keeping them constantly actively in front of you, guarding them.
Okay. And how does the sermon describe that practically? What does that look like?
It explains it as maintaining continual proximity to the heart of God, deliberately placing your faith within patterns of renourishment.
Patterns of renourishment. I like that.
Yeah. The insight here is that God's heart, as it's depicted in these texts anyway, isn't meant to be like a side dish in your life.
Or a hobby.
Or a hobby you pick up on weekends. Yeah. It's presented as the absolute center, the thing around which everything else in life should be attached or oriented.
That's a significant shift in perspective for many people, I imagine.
It is. The challenge, then, is to consciously keep that heart, that provision, that relationship at the forefront, to shamar it daily.
So, to kind of sum up what this deep dive has surfaced, true spiritual vitality, at least according to this sermon and its reading of Deuteronomy, it comes from consistently practicing shamar.
Consistent practice.
Actively keeping God's heart, which includes both the commands as expressions of love and the memory of abundant provision, keeping that at the absolute center of your life. It's really a call to proactive, constant refueling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than that reactive, last-minute, desperate charge when you're already depleted.
Exactly. And one other thing the sermon emphasizes, which feels really important as a closing thought.
Okay.
It's this profound promise from God that, as these texts suggest, God always invites those who are seeking him. He will never turn away those who come in faith.
That's powerful.
It is. You don't, as the sermon puts it, have to convince God to let you approach him. The desire is portrayed as already being there on God's part.
The invitation is open.
Always open. The covenant love described in these sources, it's presented as always ready to unfold and never let go of those who approach in faith. It's a standing offer.
Okay. So here's a final thought then, something for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. If the idea is that God's heart has always been there, right in front of you, inviting you to be continually refueled, continually centered, what might truly shift in your daily life starting today if you made that conscious, consistent decision to keep it, to truly shamar it at the very absolute core of everything?